A crisis can disrupt or even collapse existing structures and plans. And I think we all remember the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. I remember, for example, walking through the warehouse of my family business. There were no workers, no machine sounds, everything was standing still for a moment. And I think in such situations it is normal to rethink the future of plans and to think about what is needed right away. And now we will have a look on how we can assist you to combine the interests of your family and your business, and to strike a balance between the short term and the long term.
We are Next Gen Germany, here to make sure that we're Next Gen Germany, here to make sure that you overcome this crisis without having to make huge compromises. We are here with Charlotte, who is our family and analysis expert, Jakob, who is our finance and business expert, and as well as Jonas, who is our controlling and finance expert. I myself, Nora, am the family business expert. So for the agenda today, we have a lot to cover, 7 points, and I will kick you off with why we are here. So we highlighted 3 key issues here. The first one is securing future family ownership, as well as the misfit of short-term governance and unclear time frame and funding of the acquisition, of the possible acquisition, let's say. So the solution part, this would include selling part of the share with a buyback option, as well as a short-term adjustment in governance and the purpose, and also we would have to delay the acquisition. By this, we would be ensuring the family legacy, overcoming the COVID crisis on its own, and also increasing the legacy. So let's have Charlotte look at the analysis.
Thank you very much. So we understand, of course, that you know your company by heart. But to give you our best recommendations, we concluded a customized analysis, to get to the root causes of the key issues. So we will start with the family dimension. So we have your fundamentals, your 5 building blocks, so customers, people, creativity, and sustainability. And we wanted to analyze what if the fundamentals will put at risk with the acquisition. So they are non-negotiable, and we identified then that the legacy could be at risk maybe. To get to our next dimension, here we have your sources of resilience. So we have your governance, your the financial prudence, long-term thinking, and the business and owner's need balance. So we have 4 immovable pillars, and we will take the question here with us, is there a need to refocus the sources of resilience in the future? So now our last dimension, we have looked at your core strengths of your business, and with the acquisition, the future business focus. So we could increase the vertical integration and innovation, and to become the industry leader in renewable, biodegradable and sustainable ingredients. And we will take with us the required future steps with the acquisition, so we had a further addition of ingredient sourcing. To sum up with the key issues and we got to the root causes. So we have the key issue of securing future family ownership, and here we identified the root cause to have an unclear funding of the acquisition. The family business, we have the misfit of short-term governance with the root cause of missing short-term thinking, with also thinking only in decades. And the last one, to have the unclear time frame and funding of the acquisition, and we identified the root cause, the COVID-19 pandemic. So, Jakob, you want to kick us off with our recommendations?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Charlotte, for this important analysis, which will help us now to take a closer look on what you as a company, but also as a family, could do in the future. Now in this chapter, I want to focus on the two main questions. Of course, we want to answer all your questions, which will be done in the implementation part, but we have to first clarify the two key options here. Will we try to become the industry leader by acquiring the DRT, or do we try to focus on our core business and stay away from acquiring this company right now and also in the future? So to identify the most suitable and most promising option, we use the decision metrics with both family and business criteria. One of the two criteria I want to highlight specifically is, of course, the low risk of failure. As we can see, acquiring a new company is always more risky than focusing on the core business. But the second criteria I want to mention here is future growth. If you don't acquire new companies and let's say, try to focus on future growth while not ignoring the core business, of course, the future growth while acquiring a new company is much bigger. Now, at the end, according to all these criteria, our decision metrics tells us that becoming the industry leader while acquiring DRT is the option we want to go with today. Now, the second question I want to answer here straight away is, do we buy the company tomorrow, or we have to be patient and buy the company in the future? Again, we have a decision matrix, and as you can see here, a lot of criteria are rated the same because future growth and business success is not that dependent on the buying today or a year later. But the risk of failure during these times of crisis is by far different. We can see that the risk of failure while buying tomorrow is a lot higher, and in this case rated higher because it's lower, to be patient. So we decided to go with our decision metrics and be patient and acquiring the company in the future, and of course we want to cover it in the implementation part when exactly this will happen and why. So before we start going to the implementation part, let me clearly state you our recommendations. We need to sell family shares, but not to every condition. We need a buyback clause. In the family business dimension, we need to implement some sort of short-term governance to balance short and long-term vision. And as I said before, we want to be patient and delay the acquisition, but we want to acquire the company. So let's start with our implementation.
Thank you so much, Jakob. So, your legacy, our solution. We need to make sure that your goals are aligned with the future and the presence as well within these hard times. So, in the family dimension, we looked at the 5 pillars earlier, and we already said the legacy might be at risk if we were to buy the company DRT. So to make sure that the legacy is not at stake, we would implement a constitution, but we would add to the constitution, to the existing constitution, and with these 2 points, with a share of buying shares of maximum, selling shares of 20% at the maximum. So, and as well as a buyback option with interest and no voting power. So the goal would be that the shares can be bought back, and the legacy would never be at risk. So let's have a look at the ownership structure, what that would look like. Right now, everything 100% is in the Firmenich family, and after selling some shares, which again only maximum of 20%, never more, would be of external shareholders. Here you go.
Thank you so much, Nora. I want to take a close look on what you as a family business can do in the future. In our analysis, we already discovered that you have 4 big blocks of resilience that also build Firmenich's DNA. Our implementation now, the recommendation we have for you is that you keep the long-term thinking and also the business and owners' needs balance, because these are 2 blocks that are negotiable. They stand for them alone. Now we saw with the COVID crisis, which introduced new customer behaviors, unclear future, and also a bit unclear results, that you have to put in the short-term thinking as well, because you need to be able to diverge your decisions and not only look at the long-term part, but also implementing the short-term thinking part. Therefore, we want to introduce this fifth pillar there. The governance part and the financial prudence is something we want to adapt also according to the need for changes because of the COVID pandemic. How are we going to do this exactly? We want to recommend you to introduce a fund that acts as a safety fund for future crises. You need the funding for, you need a fund to be able to have a crisis committee, which we will introduce later on. Also, the funding would be there for an early warning system to be able to recognize new crises in the future before they even come up. Therefore, we need a starting capital of about 50 million euro, and we would put 2% of the yearly revenue of the company in there to be safe there and have a stable fund to build up on. As I said, we also recommend you to introduce a crisis committee that will have quarterly meetings and implement this yearly warning system I already talked about, and again looking at future crises and preventing unsure results there. This crisis committee then will also account for an investment stop that comes due to the crisis in the year 2021. Looking at the business dimension to dive more deeper into the issues of the acquisition, we already stated that we have planned a delayed start for you. So we won't be starting tomorrow with the acquisition, but we want to be patient. We calculated a minimum 1 year of crisis management because of the COVID crisis, and as we said, the crisis committee would implement a clear investment stop for 2021 in order to be able to settle down and overcome the crisis, and not putting new risks into the company with acquiring another company there. We want to rely on your resilient supply chain that has been there for about 125 years, and you as a company already went through a lot of crisis situations, and your supply chain really stayed resilient there. For the planned buy-in, we want to implement the buy-in according to your current procedure for mergers and acquisitions. So we have the usual docking strategy you already implemented greatly, and your 3L mindset. Also, what we could achieve with the delayed start of the investment is that there's a potential lower acquisition price because of the crisis. Looking at the acquisition price, we planned 750 million for the overall price, and we saw that you cannot afford this right away. So we need to divide it in 2 blocks there. So the first 500 million would be the direct payment of your company. We'll also see in the financials later why we can put this block there, and the rest of the 250 million of the value will be done by shares with 2-sided buyback options. To summarize, we looked at the house you built up again, and we saw that we added with our implementation further part of the family constitution, which really is the base for your house and keeps everything stable and in place. Also, we introduced family as well as business measures. For the family side, we had the family assembly where you come together and discuss crisis matters, which will be topped by the emergency committee that will have the warning system in place and also guide you through the crisis. And on top, we want to introduce the emergency fund that has a stable capital to be able to manage this and future crises. Jakob now will take you through the numbers and tell you what you exactly need to await in terms of finance and investment.
Thank you, Jonas. So let me guide you through our finance plan. We've heard about the acquisition and about the buy price. So let's first take a closer look on what you've done till today. The revenue and your data is great, but a crisis can change that. We've seen that the COVID start hasn't hit you as much as expected because you're resilient and you have a big foundation to build on. But for the future, you never know. So this is why we're looking in the future. Basically, we're here, as it's stated today. In 2021, there's still a crisis. If the crisis is over, the crisis committee thinks the danger is over, let me put it like this, we can start in 2022 with the merger and acquisition. So 500 million euros will be based on our profit calculation here. Almost, we're still profitable in this year, but we won't make a loss. Now adding the next company will gain future revenue and also future profits. This is basically be done by adding the yearly profit of the company we're going to buy from about 550 million, I guess, to about 1.6 billion euros in profit in the future. Let me state that 2022 is an average case scenario. The crisis can hold on longer, but these are the future revenue and profit data you can expect. So let us come to the timetable and talk about the implementation a little bit more in the time frame.
Thank you so much, Jakob. Now, I'm sure you want to know when you need to implement which measures and who has the responsibility for it. Again, looking at our 3 dimensions, we have the family dimension, the family business dimension, and the business dimension. The first steps for the family dimension would be to do a shareholder meeting. So you would gather all family shareholders and discuss the current situation. Right away after that, we recommend you to implement the family constitution. Again, all family members share the responsibility here. In terms of family business matters, you could introduce the crisis committee right away, because this would be an important step to do right away to be ordered to manage the further crisis. After the introduction of the committee, you could implement the fund that will stay in place for the next few years of crisis, and here we have the board of directors in place for it. For the last dimension, the business dimension, we clearly introduce or clearly recommend you to delay the DRT acquisition, because as we already said, it is more risky to do it in terms of crisis now, but we would delay it and put it after the crisis. Also, you could implement the investment stop in 2022, which would help you also to come through the crisis. And then the actual acquisition, we would plan for the earliest date of 2023. As you all know, such projects never come without any risks. And what you need to be aware of and how we plan to mitigate risks, Nora will tell you now.
Thank you so much, Jonas. So let's have a quick look at the most important risks here. In the business dimension, we found that the biggest risk would be that there would be no acceptance of the buyback clause, that it wouldn't be enough for the family members to give off their shares. The mitigation here would be to sell shares to external potential buyers, as well as the important risk of that I'm sorry, I mixed them up. The first one is the no acceptance of the buyback clause, and the second one is no member wants to sell the shares. And for that, the mitigation would be that we would either have to go with a loan instead, or search for a partner that would collaborate for the acquisition. And for the buyback clause, we would sell the shares to external potential buyers. So, let's summarize. Solutions that are rooted in trust. We found that we need to be securing the future family ownership. We would be doing that by selling part of the shares with a buyback option, and therefore we would be ensuring your family legacy. There was also a misfit of the short-term governance, which we solve by introducing a short-term governance plan, as well as adjusting the purpose for this short-term problematic period of time. The impact of that would be that we would be overcoming the COVID crisis, as well as we had an unclear time frame of the funding of the acquisition. We would be delaying the acquisition and therefore increasing your legacy.
So, our way to ensure your short-term success with a long-term perspective will include that you preserve your 5 fundamentals, you will strengthen your source of resilience, and you will have a clear path for your acquisition of DRT. Thank you.
Thank you. Judges will now have 10 minutes to ask questions of the presenting team, and I invite the lead judge to start the questions.
Great, thank you. I want to challenge your assessment of the risk of this deal. Okay, they've been working with this company for 30 years. It is a related diversification for them, so they know the company. They know it is in their industry. If it was unrelated diversification, I agree. It would be a lot of risk. But this is a company they've worked with for 30 years. They've also negotiated an agreement with them. They've signed a contract, and it's based on debt, not on shares. It's based on debt, that they can buy back that debt. Can you support the risks of this deal a little bit more? Can you talk about the risks you see in this deal, why it's walk away right now?
So that's actually a great question. And the risk coming with this deal is not based on the relationship with the company and not based on our missing trust to the company. It's more based on the external factors, because the COVID crisis until today haven't hit us too hard in terms of financials. But what if this happens in the next year? In the year we are planning to acquire this deal, we have to do the acquisition in the right way. So there are steps needed. We need to implement all the new employees and the structure. We can learn a lot from the new company, and we want to buy it, but not in terms of crisis, when we have a lot of crisis management going on. And since you've already mentioned there is a long-term relationship, we of course can speak to each other and say, let's make the deal in 1 year. We still do business in this year, but the acquisition will be delayed. So,
Yeah.
If I may add, as well as you have so many customers and so many people that that you've been loyal to. So we are sure that you want to make sure that you are able to stay loyal to them. You continue to buy flowers, even though it's not in the plan right now to produce more other new perfume.
Uh-huh.
So we need to make sure that you'll be able to make that happen as well until you make that investment. And if that would be at risk as well if you would make that investment right now. So we need to look at the big picture here.
Okay.
Maybe to summarize, we want to take the crisis and look at your reliable and resilient structure in your company to overcome the crisis. And as Jakob already said, when we've overcome it, we can look at the next steps with the acquirement of DRT. Sorry.
No, it's totally fine. So is it possible that there's a scenario where the less risky thing is actually to go through with the acquisition now? So this is a company we've had a 30-year partnership with. All of a sudden in the last few years, they have all these financial sponsor, partial owners. It's not only owned by the family anymore. In a world where there's uncertainty around supply chain, which you mentioned, wouldn't going forward and controlling our own supply chain more be less risky rather than more risky?
So in our analysis, that's also a great point, and we discussed it internally a lot. It's basically that we think that the long-term thinking could be hurtful sometimes. And there is a lot of short-term governance we need to implement right now for this crisis, but also for future crises. Because we live in a generation where climate change and all the other stuff come fast. And of course, the supply chain is important, but the internal structure, like the governance and the crisis committee, needs to be implemented first, and this cannot be done by the acquisition. So basically, this is the reason for.
I'm going to switch subjects a little bit here. I'm not sure I understand your logic to sell additional shares, especially outside the company at this time, because our financial condition is very strong. Your assumptions, which I agree with, is there was a flattening for a year, not a decline. Things aren't falling apart. Short-term crisis, yes, but why do we want to sell and dilute ownership now when we're not in the need for cash?
So, yeah.
Go ahead.
So that's a good question. And in the discussion with you as a company, we heard that it's not possible to pay the 750 million cash right now, and we are not willing to give away the ownership. We implemented a future scenario. If we need cash, we have this 20% max share we can give out, and this is the first time we're doing that, because in the times of crisis, we don't know the revenue of next year. So basically, we won't risk it, and we try to buy back the shares as soon as possible if we can. And if they don't accept our buyback clause, for example, to be able in better times after the acquisition to pay the shares back so it's fully family owned again, we search for another partner to buy the shares with this buyback clause. Even if you have to pay extra, it's to mitigate the risk somehow.
Okay. So
Yeah, just
Yeah.
to make sure
I gotta
that it's
follow up here.
understood, there's we would be selling the shares once we want to buy the company if we're not able to pay the at that time.
All right.
So it's not, we don't want to sell the shares now. We want to sell the shares if it's necessary at that time of the acquisition in the future.
But would your answer be different if I were to say, your price of 750 million is twice what you're going to pay? That's 2 times sales. Companies don't even sell for 1 times sales. The price is closer to 300 million euros, not 750. Is your answer different if the number's that much smaller?
So let me rephrase that. If the price we can buy the company is smaller, so we can afford it, if we would buy it without selling shares, for example, of course, yes. Okay. 100%.
Okay, I would like to talk about the governance structure that you're proposing. It's the house thing that you have. Yes, well, with the committees. Oh, good.
Sorry.
So, if I understand correctly, you say we need to, due to the crisis, we need to implement an emergency fund and an emergency committee, and we have to step up with the family governance. So my question is, who will be in the emergency committee? Why doesn't the board take on that job? Because they are for the short-term thinking as well. And what is the job of the why would you have a family assembly? For what reason?
Bless you.
So,
So first emergency committee,
Starting
why
with the
and who is we in it?
emergency committee, it's basically the board of directors has to focus on the core business. But we do think that they are lacking some kind of short-term thinking, especially when we're thinking about the next 10 years where crisis will occur more often. So basically there are people similar to the board of directors, but with a more focus on the emergency, on the crisis. So basically they're advising the board of directors
Okay.
but
So
they're
who-
not the same people.
Who, for example, will be in it then?
People from our company that played a huge role in the last year. So we need to find the people first, of course.
Okay. So, and then the family assembly, we've got a system in place. Why do you think a family assembly has to be added at that moment in time?
So we thought about the family assembly to add as a place where the family is more integrated for the future as well, to have a broader committee or the family assembly that in the future maybe we are come to the agreement to sell more shares, that we have a place that the family is, because the family is really large in the moment, that's the place that where the family comes together and discuss important factors. Yeah.
Next slide, please. Next slide, please. No, the one with the short-term thinking crisis committee.
Yeah, it's different. You have to.
Okay, I got it. Oh, right there, right there. Tell me how a crisis committee in a situation where we're in COVID would meet quarterly. That's every 3 months.
So basically, that you got the wrong impression. That's not in a crisis. That's based on a time where there is no crisis. They still have to meet. So basically, in times of COVID, they will meet almost daily and work daily. But this is implemented for the long run. So basically, yeah.
Just super fast, would your recommendation change if the profit, you assumed a 20% profit margin. Let's say the profit margins were 40% in this company. Would your recommendation change?
So recommending to acquire the company,
Yes.
we always want to acquire the company. And if we are able to buy it today with a bigger profit margin, we would buy it today.
Yeah, maybe to add again, if we could buy it today, it would also help us to come through the crisis, because I think that also touched by your earlier question, we could control our own supply chain then, but as we saw in the financials.
But not for every financial risk.
Yeah.
So if the financials are right, we would do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you.